Greetings friends, welcome to the weekly tactics video. It is the end of Leviathan and we'll have a new video out covering all the new cards and rules in Pariah Nexus in the next few days. The pre-orders are here and you should be getting your cards tomorrow. So that's probably on the agenda for next week. But at the moment, let's look at what is another tournament winning Blood Angels list that went 5-0 at the tail end of Leviathan. So what is very strong right now, and what can we learn and what can we carry forward into this new season of Warhammer 40,000? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get straight into it, my friends. So if we are just meeting, my name is John and I'm the Blood Angels Commander, and every week we're going to tell you how to get the most out of your Blood Angels on the tabletop. This week it was a 5-0 wins, 34 player GT for Max Swartzer. He beat Death Guard, which I think is actually quite a tough matchup for Blood Angels if you're going infantry heavy. He beat Aldari, Orcs, Tau, and then beat the Gene Stealer cults in the final battle of the day. And I guess interesting thing with Tau is Retribution Cadre is actually very, very strong. Lots of high AP in there. That's all about the battle suits, and I actually made like a 1,000-point getting started video on this detachment. If you haven't watched any of my videos for looking at some of the other armies, I'll link it up here, so please click through if you want to see it and check out as well. So 1,000-point. I'm going to do Orcs in the near future too, because I think Orcs at the moment are super strong. So let's look at this Blood Angels list. And we've got 2 captains, which would instantly probably apply 2 Assault Intercessor squads and 2 Impulsors. We know that is a combo. I actually did a video on that a few weeks ago, and that is one of the most popular combos that you're going to see for Blood Angels. And possibly that combo is still going to be very strong moving into Pariah Nexus, because it includes Battle Line, and Battle Line are obviously much better in Pariah Nexus as well. So we're probably still going to see double Captain, double Assault Intercessors, double Impulsor. If you don't own any Impulsors, now might be the time to get them. They've gone from being very obscure picks to very meta for Blood Angels. We've got Lamartas plus that 10 Death Company. We've got a Chaplain on foot plus a 10 Death Company with that will fit inside a Rhino. Again, this is another very strong pick. Rhino, Death Company, Chaplain inside. We're seeing that quite a lot. That Chaplain also has that nice little once per game caveat of being able to unbattle shock anything within 12 inches. Could actually be useful if the transport's destroyed with the Death Company inside. We've got the Sanguiner. We know what he does, some heroic intervention nonsense. We have a Death Company Dreadnought with double Heavy Flamer and Blood Talons. So while these guys normally go after vehicles, this one is sort of geared up to potentially do some anti-infantry. We've got 5 Jump Assault Marines with that Power Fist. It's important to note that he missed a couple of Plasma Pistols in this list, especially on these Jump Assault Intercessors. I guess in the grand scheme of things, a free Plasma Pistol isn't going to change too much. We've got the Infiltrators that will be deployed typically for the backfield. We actually have a 1 squad of Eradicators here with double Multi-Melta, and then we've got the squad of Scouts as well. And the interesting thing about the double Multi-Melta Eradicators, I guess, is that gives him some pretty decent firepower. You're going to get 8 Melta shots out of there, and I would probably expect these to be reserved. So you're just going to bring them in, and you're going to hit something with 8 minus 4 Meltas, full hit rerolls, full wound rerolls, and full damage rerolls, I believe, on the Eradicators. We don't see them too often in Sons of Sanguinius, but they are a very decent unit. And if you're fighting against something that is not the craziest high number of toughness, for example, like Elder Battle Walkers or something, where you actually have a somewhat decent wound roll, then you would expect a lot of hits and a lot of wounds with those Eradicators. And you don't need to be wasting your Oath of Moment. The one thing I noticed about this list is you should actually mainly be able to play your Oath of Moment on your Captain Assault Intercessor combos, which is good because those Assault Intercessors can get rerolls to wound as well. So combine that with rerolls to hit from Oath of Moment. That's probably going to make the most sense for your Oath of Moment. Death Company don't need Oath of Moment. Eradicators don't need Oath of Moment. So you're probably going to be able to use that on those Assault Intercessors, which is kind of interesting. I don't think Chain Swords are the most deadliest thing. I mean, you only get 20 chainsword, 25 chainsword attacks out of those Assault Intercessors. I guess 20 plus the 4 power fists, but I guess adding Oath in there just adds a little bit of reliability to a fairly cheap unit. 155 points for a captain plus those assault intercessors. Full rerolls to hit. If you're fighting on an objective, full rerolls to wound. If you're not, it's rerolls of 1. So how do you play this list, right? You got 3 transports. You're going to try and move them all forward in obscure positions, and you're going to try and get ready to react. And what I mean by ready to react is you're going to disembark 3 inches, you're going to move your 6 inches, you're probably going to charge, right? So bonus points if you can park these transport on objectives in obscuring positions, or bonus points if when your units disembark, they're going to be able to fight enemies on objectives, because that's going to get you the rerolls from those assault intercessors for your wound rolls. So the Impulsor also moves 12 inches, so in turn 1, if you were advancing, that's an up to an 18-inch move, somewhere between 13 and 18, so probably like somewhere like a 15, but it's very powerful if you roll a 6. You're going to fire these transports forward, you're going to try and obscure them, and in the new missions, there's some useful things that transports can do. For example, we played the new missions for the first time this week, and there's one where you can actually sabotage a terrain feature and you get points, but you need to survive through your opponent's turn to get the points. While a transport that's sitting in an obscured position inside a terrain feature is very useful for this. So that's going to come in pretty useful for sabotage in the new Pariah Nexus cards. Right. We're going to disembark those finest hour captains with the assault intercessors and be ready to react. So what that means is bonus points if your transports are parked forward, you disembark, you make a charge, you use your Oath of Moment, you use your rerolls to hit, you use the captain's free stratagem to give them Red Rampage and lethal hits, you use the finest hour to give the captain 3 bonus attacks and devastating wounds. So these guys can do a fair amount of damage for the points you're spending, and then afterwards you've got the transport that can go sit on the objective to still hold it and score your points, or potentially do some actions, again, to score your points. Infiltrators and scouts can be quite flexible in this list, in that if you feel your opponent is maybe going to threaten your backfield, you start your infiltrators in the backfield. If you feel your opponent has no indirect fire, nothing to threaten your backfield, then the scouts can easily be there. The infiltrators can go somewhere mid-board and maybe obscure / block out some of the mid-board for you. You've got 10 Death Company, which I would probably put in reserve. You've got those Eradicators, also easy to put in reserve. The Death Company squad with Lamartes is a very powerful Rapid Ingress unit. I've been playing Dante plus 10 Sanguinary Guard, but this is just as good. You bring them in, then you move 12 inches, you shoot 10 Infernal Pistols, you make a charge. It is really powerful. You can even throw grenades, I suppose, with Lamartes, because he doesn't have an Infernal Pistol, right? Potentially, you could save CP in this list to fight on death with both Death Company units. Both Death Company units do a ton of damage. Remember, if your big squad of Death Company all gets killed and you fight on death, you will fight with sustain 2 on the entire unit that was killed this turn, which is crazy powerful. So the Death Company out of the Rhino potentially being very, very powerful with fight on death. And you get to react to opponent aggression potentially with a Sanguinar, and you can pay a CP there to basically fight and precision out an enemy character. And the Sanguinar has a decent chance of precisioning him out like a 4-wound model, in that he has like 8 attacks and he has devastating wounds and precision. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the Blood Angel Sons of Sanguinius bonus when he arrives from strategic reserve, but is still somewhat decent, and he is still hitting at -3. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of a list like this? Well, it's going to be quite versatile. You've got a lot of chainswords and you have a lot of strength 10. You also have the ability to get lethals and lance all over the place, and you don't have to spend CP on that all that often, right? Because one Death Company have a chaplain attached, so they don't necessarily always need CP and Red Rampage. Lamartes gives lethal hits again, always not needing CP on Red Rampage, and the captains are going to do that for free. So you get basically the best of both worlds. You get those chainswords at strength 6 with potential lethals and +1 to wound. You get the power fists at strength 10 with either lethals or +1 to wound. So it's very powerful. You've got the fast moving transports with the ablative wounds. And do you know what? I keep playing Eldar and I feel Eldar quite strong, but do you know what's really good against Eldar is Impulsors, because the 5-up invulnerable save is very good against Impulsors, and also both the bolters and like tank shock is potentially pretty good against Eldar. I always end up killing quite a lot of stuff with the bolters and stubbers on the Impulsors into Eldar, because toughness 3 infantry don't do too well against like just AP 0 strength 4 fire. So impulsors, they typically get ignored because the Eldar player doesn't want to waste like D cannons killing impulsors, and then the impulsors actually do some work. So fast moving cheap transports can be very useful into certain armies, and then those transports and your scouts and your jump intercessors gives you lots of ways to score points, and I think that'll be true even in the new edition or the new set of rules we're getting with the new data cards, which we'll release tomorrow from this video. We also have 2 chaplains with 4 Death Company units, and that's that 50% ratio I talk about. I feel like if you, for every 2 Death Company units you're going to bring, you probably want to bring a chaplain. So we basically have 2 chaplains, 4 Death Company units. Sorry, I got confused there. It's actually just 3 Death Company units. You've got 2 squads of 10, and then you've got the Death Company Dreadnought. Now, sometimes you would see 2 squads of 5, the 10-man squad, and the Death Company Dreadnought, but regardless, I also always say you probably need to be 50% chaplains, or a 50% ratio of chaplains. So this is actually a 66% ratio. So it should be good in terms of most of your Death Company should be able to get some sort of OC from those chaplains. We also know the Death Company Dreadnought can be just a bit of a missile. Some people like to play him, bring him in, make a 7-inch charge, use the CP to get the 6-inch consolidate, and then just fight and fight and fight until he's dead. And if you're doing that, maybe you don't care about OC. So that's fine as well. The weakness is this list could struggle into fight first enemies, because you have nothing that can fight first, and you are a lot of toughness 4 infantry, and toughness 4 infantry doesn't really like things fight first against them, so that could be a weakness. You only have 2 jump pack units, which also could be a weakness because you're not very fast and able to react to very many threats, but maybe the amount of transports you have means it's okay. And then you could struggle into armor heavy lists or enemies with a lot of anti-infantry, because armor heavy, then chainswords, and I've been doing this, I've been struggling with this. My list has a lot of chainswords. In fact, my list has more chainswords than this list here. And chainswords don't do too well into tons of enemy armor. And also, if you come up against like Drukhari and they have a ton of anti-infantry fire, or recently I played Grey Knights and they had 3 Land Raider Redeemers, then you can have some problems if you're a ton of infantry, right? So there is some weaknesses in this list. But if we break it all down, right, so for objective holding, we could use those infiltrators in the backfield. We'd also use the 3 transports, and we could use the scouts there potentially and have a bit more flexibility with infiltrators. So I think it gives you about 8.5 out of 10 in terms of OBSEC holding. For anti-horde, you've got up to 75 chainsword per turn, and a lot of those chainswords are going to be able to benefit from oath or rerolls. Interestingly, we've gone blood talons and flamers on the Death Company Dreadnought, which actually adds a bit more anti-horde as well. And then you've got up to 80 power fist attacks per turn, and that's before you bring in the sustain 2 that the Death Company can get when they start losing models. Against vehicles and monsters, we've got captains in the transports, which can be exceedingly strong because of the dev wounds. The squad of eradicators in reserve, which can bring in a reactionary 8 melta shots, which again could be targeted on monsters or vehicles, could actually be very good. Bear in mind those melta shots have full hits and wound rerolls. For mobility, we've definitely seen faster Blood Angels lists. We only have 15 jump infantry in this list, but it should be able to react, and units can always get back in transports. We don't see it happen too much, but I have been doing it more frequently. Specialization, I would have thought that if there was one thing that this might struggle to deal with, it might struggle to deal with Death Guard, with Plague Marines, especially if they have the Foul Blight spawns to fight first. They also have all those anti-infantry biologists and the flamers. But you know what? He played that in his very first game and he beat them. And I mean, you can beat Death Guard. One of the things that's very good against them is that fight on Death Company, because that will statistically wipe the entire Plague Marine squad. So if you're willing to trade one squad of Death Company to get rid of a whole squad of Plague Marines, that can be okay. And then I guess if you use other things, like you could shoot the Plague Marines out with, like, it wouldn't actually be the worst thing in the world to take those 8 melta-guns and shoot all them into Plague Marines just to get rid of them, because they are the fight first thing. And I guess if you have enough that can whittle them down, and one thing that could whittle them down, I suppose, would be 10 Infernal Pistols and some grenades before the charge as well. So smart use could actually mean that you're okay here. So what are the overall thoughts, right? This is the cheap, reliable transports to absorb enemy shooting. 20 Death Company, which really solidifies as, like, the Death Company have been the best, most damaging choice for this entire year for Blood Angels. Vanguard Veterans, Sanguinary Guard have been far behind them, I would say. So we still see at the end of the year, it's still Death Company that get all the play. I am going to take 10 Sanguinary Guard myself to a GT in 2 weeks' time. I guess it'll be a GT using the Pariah Nexus cards. They've only been out like a hot minute. So we'll see how that gets on. But I've been wanting to run them for a while because a whole year of only having the Death Company as the main choice has been fine, I guess. But I always... like, I enjoy the game more when Death Company, Vanguard Veterans, Sanguinary Guard are all viable. And one of the best times I think I ever enjoyed the game was when I actually had a list that ran one squad of each. And I think that list even ran one squad of Terminators as well. So I like having a variety of different units. I think it's more fun than just spamming the same 3 units in every list. But this list has been... this is actually a very fun and a fairly unique variant on some of the other lists we've seen, right? We've seen very similar lists with the 2 Impulsors and the Rhino, but double Ball Predator. But the one thing that I want to actually commend Max on in this list is he has done 905 points of melee units and he's done 500 points of melee characters. So if you want to get the absolute most out of Sons of Sanguinius, you should be shooting for something like this, where, like, I think in my list I found that I started winning a lot more games once I had like 1200, 1300 points of melee units. Because Sons of Sanguinius is a melee detachment, you want to be getting the absolute most out of this detachment. You don't only want like 500 points of melee. If that is your case, then you're probably better looking at the other detachments. So this list starts with 905 points of melee units, 500 points of melee characters. You throw in those 3 transports, which is like almost 300 points, and you throw in your 1 squad of eradicators. That's the whole list, right? Like, the list is 100% focused on that melee units and melee characters, and that gives you the best chance of winning games with Sons of Sanguinius. And well done to Max, another Blood Angels player, winning 5-0. Man, I really wish I could do 5-0 at a 34-player GT, but regardless. So, if you enjoyed this video or you feel like you got some value, I do have a playlist on the channel, and I'm going to link it up here above my head. This is a playlist where basically every month I pick a Blood Angels list that has won an event or done really well, in the case of the thumbnail up there right now, a 2nd place Black Rage Blood Angels list, and I go over it on stream and I try and tell you why it's good and how to play it and what you should be doing. And hey, I don't like copying other people's lists. If you see me play on my battle reports, you know I make my own lists. But I think you can learn a lot from seeing what everybody else is doing. You could take some of those meta units, and I must admit, I have a captain in an Impulsor in my list. And, you know, so... and I have Death Company with chaplains on my list. So it's basically like you can see what other people are doing, and I always break those down. I try and do that so that Blood Angels players can learn more. And someone actually messaged me, one of my biggest patrons, Aradine, messaged me and asked me to go over this list this week. So that's what I've done. So if you would like to suggest things for me to do, join me on Patreon. It's like $3 a month. I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe. If you are picking up the new data cards or the mission cards tomorrow, remember there is a Element Games affiliate link in the video description. You can use that, or you can click the big join button and become a channel member. I am John. I am the Blood Angels Commander. If there's any questions you have about the new data cards, please leave me a comment. Remember as well, you can leave me your army list, and I'll try and cover it on our Sunday show that goes out 8 PM every Sunday UK time, where every week we look at 5 or 6 community submitted lists. You don't need to be a channel member for me to look at your list. I will look at everybody's lists. Get a bit more priority if you're a channel member. But I will look at your list and I'll tell you what I like about it, and I'll give you some suggestions to improve it. So, until the next video, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, do the YouTube algorithm stuff. I'll see you sometime this week. And, we're 2 weeks from the Blood Angels Commander GT, so I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys there as well. Till next time, guys, by the blood are we made strong. Peace.